Muscovy ducks are better than chickens for my homestead. What's up guys, Nate Petrosky from Narrowway Homestead. I'm going to tell you why ducks are better than chickens, why Muscovy ducks are actually ducks and not somehow closely related to some goose or something, and some advanced things I've learned about keeping ducks over the last few years. Alright, first of all, ducks are better than chickens. Ducks, oh, you're not a duck. The ducks I have are Muscovy ducks, and they do differ a little bit from the mallard-based ducks, or the mallard-derived ducks, I should say. So obviously what I'm going to tell you is not necessarily applicable to every other kind of duck. First, you got to know where I live. I live in West Virginia, in the country, although I like to tell people I live in the wilderness because living in the country has come to mean something different than like barely being able to see your neighbors in the wintertime. They're there somewhere. I've got 120 acres here. It's very wild and free. There's a lot of predators. There's a lot of bugs. The first point I want to make about ducks versus chickens is pest control. Now, chickens eat bugs, ducks eat bugs. The difference is you will often find chickens digging into the ground to get earthworms and grubs and all kinds of other stuff, and ducks, when they're eating bugs, they will generally just get stuff that's around. What are the bugs that are around? Ticks, mosquitoes. You know, the ones that are really annoying you the most? Those are the ones they're eating. I've observed a lot of different chickens eating bugs, and most of the time they're digging for stuff. Not always, but most of the time they'll dig, get full off of that. But what about all the bugs flying around? What about the ticks crawling? Sure, they do eat some ticks, no question about it, but that's one of the main reasons, and actually the main reason I have ducks is because I want bug control. This leads me also to part of why I say ducks are better than chickens, because of where I live, the way I homestead, how I choose to run my animals and feed them and everything else. That's why ducks are better for me. You should learn throughout this video which might be best for you, and you may decide that chickens are best for you, and that's totally okay. I said that my primary purpose for the ducks was to eat bugs. Their secondary purpose is to lay eggs, and third, to provide meat. Most people that have birds, poultry of some kind, especially the ones that go for chickens, put eggs as their #1 priority, but they don't normally live someplace that requires bugs to be so under control, like in the middle of nowhere. This brings me to my second point about Muscovy ducks. They are hardier than chickens. They seem to be more capable of taking care of themselves. I've primarily had Muscovy ducks for 4 years now. I have yet to have to deal with a crop issue or an egg-bound issue, or a lot of these things that seem to be a whole lot more common, and after a number of years, I feel like the biggest issues will be presenting themselves, not just I had a lucky year and then the next year I have all kinds of problems. Now third, onto the eggs, because most of you think that eggs are the primary reason for you to have a bird, and that might be true. And that kind of has to do a lot with feeding your birds, in my opinion. My ducks obviously free range. I feed them 4 months out of the year. I feed them whole corn as of this winter because I learned something recently. Digesting those whole kernels of corn keeps them warmer because of the digestion process, and in the wintertime that's awesome, and that's when I'm feeding them. So what does this have to do with laying eggs? Well, it has everything to do with laying eggs, because if you're not getting enough eggs from your birds, you either need different birds or more birds. I opt for more birds. I got 120 acres here. There's plenty of bugs for free food for ducks. So if I need more eggs, I need more birds. I believe Muscovy ducks lay an average of around 100 eggs a year, and a chicken, at least a layer breed of chicken, will lay somewhere around 300 eggs a year. Now the duck eggs are just a little bit bigger, but still you're getting more egg protein, more eggs, more food from chickens laying than you are from ducks laying when you compare the same number of birds. Muscovy ducks, however, eat a lot more, significantly more than chickens. If you're keeping them in a coop, you're not free-ranging them, you're buying food like most chicken owners do, you're going to find Muscovy ducks get very expensive to feed. And then you're going to do a little bit of math about how much money it costs you per egg that you get, and you're going to decide, wow, that's really expensive, even though Muscovy duck eggs are way more delicious and just better for baking and everything about them is just better. You might just decide it's too expensive. Dagger, I have cleaner water for you. Hey, I have better water than the murky pond. The other thing I do with free-ranging ducks is I don't clip their wings. They're able to fly everywhere, and they really haven't created enough of a nuisance for me to decide that's not a good idea. Last year, I actually witnessed a fox attack. Actually, it was 2 years ago. a fox attack on my ducks and 12 baby ducklings. The mother flopped and flailed around just long enough until she got up into the air and flew off, the fox chasing. The ducklings ran to the coop. I had no losses that day. Now, one thing I will say about raising baby ducks is baby ducks are nature's candy. Everything wants to eat them. Ducks are about as intelligent as a tree stump, but chickens are about as intelligent as a tree stump floating in a pond that doesn't hold water, like just slightly lower, but they're both really dumb. But that's okay, because nobody's keeping ducks or chickens for their high intelligence level. They've got other uses. This is the first year I have decided to raise from babies ducks and a couple chickens. I had a few more chickens, but as I soon found out, they're not as hardy. First year I've tried to raise baby birds in the middle of winter during a crazy snowstorm. They have a kerosene lantern inside their little masonry hutch that keeps them warm, dry. Unfortunately, they don't all choose to always go in there, and there's issues, and I've found that the chickens were just way more vulnerable. They had way more issues. I started out with 7 of them. I have 2. Meanwhile, I've only lost 1 duck during that entire time. Now, unfortunately, it seems like the ducks don't choose to always go in there, and that led to an injury the other night when an owl decided to attack my ducks. At least that's what I think happened, because that footage was recorded from the second night. Right after that, that morning I found one of my ducks was rather injured and bleeding from the wing, and I think it was probably just too close to the edge. The owl came down, probably tried to get a hold of it. Obviously it was able to escape and move away from the chicken wire, so it didn't die. However, it did manage to sustain an injury. I have a livestock guardian dog, and he does really well at keeping away all sorts of predators that are on the ground that have legs and not wings. Birds, he's not quite figured it all out yet though, but he's not 2 yet, so I'm hoping he gets there. This duck who had the injured wing ended up getting quarantined in here with the rabbits just to make sure that the other birds didn't pick on him. I think he was just laying at the wrong place, wrong time, and I think he's good enough now that he'll have no trouble going back there and hanging out with them again tonight. You missing your friends, huh? Look at all the other ducks laughing at me. Haha, you're the one locked in there, we're free. This brings me to the next related topic. People on the internet, seems like every year or so, it kind of goes crazy with people saying, Muscovy ducks are not ducks. They're more closely related to a goose or something else. And then the reason everybody gives for all that just kind of baffles me, because they say when it breeds with a mallard-derived duck, which is pretty much any other duck other than Muscovies, the birds that are hatched out of those eggs are infertile and cannot reproduce. They're essentially a mule duck. And then from what I've heard, people are saying that that means that they're not truly a duck and they're more closely related to geese. However, the question I always ask is what happens when a duck and a goose breeds? Does an infertile bird happen too? No, nothing happens at all. There's no life that comes from that at all. I'm not a scientist. I don't have lots of PhDs and all kinds of other letters behind my name. I'm not a doctor. But to a simple-minded person like me, there's got to be more genetic similarities between these and mallard-based ducks than these and a goose, because at least they can reproduce. Even if it's not for generations, they can breed for 1 generation and produce another living being. So then the argument often turns into something about what in the world are ducks, and then the definition of duck, and at that point I just lose interest. Like, these things are similar to ducks. They look like a duck, quacks like a duck. Okay, quacks like a Muscovy duck. Ah, there we go. There's a khaki Campbell. I do have one oddball duck that is not a Muscovy duck. She just hangs out, bosses them around, or thinks she does. But for all practical purposes, these guys are all ducks. In summary, Muscovy ducks are best for me because I hardly have to feed them except for cheap whole corn kernels in the winter time. That helps keep them warm. I've noticed they're doing a lot better during the cold winters, and this was the coldest winter we've had like ever, and I noticed less issues with them being cold. And all I give the adult full-grown ducks is a 3-sided shelter, and they did just fine. They eliminate my bugs for me, they lay enough eggs for me, and if they don't lay enough eggs, I get more ducks. The other thing I really like about them that I didn't mention is I moved out here for the nice, quiet, peaceful nature sounds. And Muscovy ducks do have a quack of sorts, but it's more of a raspy sort of thing. Chickens are loud, and I do hear chickens pretty much daily, even though they're a half mile that way. They're not mine, and they're quiet enough to not really bother me. But if I had a bunch of chickens right here, as many ducks as I do, I wouldn't hear any nature sounds. I would just hear chickens all the time. Anyway, chickens may be the absolute best bird for your lifestyle, your homestead, your small farm, your backyard little pen, or Muscovy ducks might be, or something entirely different. But from this video, you should have been able to tell some different pros and cons of each of them and decide which fits your lifestyle better. Guys, why are we getting so carried away? Yes, a 170-pound livestock guardian dog is being chased around by an 18-pound minion. Right, minion? Did you tell him how it was? Oh, you're gonna tell him again. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully this video helped. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave me a comment, let me know if I'm wrong, and we'll see you in the next one.
With the beard and the vision, he narrates his life. Cutting firewood, draining beasts away from city strife. The ducks they roam freely, a quiet army true. Muscovy's in